Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you very much for tuning in. This is a screencast-o-matic presentation and recording for the part of the lesson that has looking at a reading from Upfront Scholastic on midterm exams, congressional elections. Before we get started, please let me encourage you to open up to today's lesson, scroll down the correct section, and get ready to answer the key concept questions that coincide with the reading. Please remember that you can play any part of this presentation for detail, clarity, or repetition later on. Let's go ahead and get started. Midterm exams. A lot is at stake for President Trump and the nation in this year's midterm elections. What do you and President Trump have in common? You'll both soon be sweating your midterms. The congressional elections that take place midway through a president's term are known as midterms. Even though President Trump, a Republican, won't be on the ballot, how well his party performs in the November vote is seen as an important test of the president's popularity. And President Trump is probably a big part of why interest in this year's midterm seems to be higher than usual. Trump always talks about how he's good for ratings, and I think that's right, says Kyle Connick of University of Virginia Center for Politics. There's a lot of intensity of emotion about politics on both sides. A lot of people are passionate supporters of the president, and a lot of people are very angry at the president. Connick thinks all emotion will translate into higher voter turnout than usual for the midterms. The party out of power. All 435 seats in the House of Representatives are up for election, along with 35 out of 100 U.S. Senate seats and 36 state governors. It's a norm for the party out of power to make large gains in midterms. In fact, in 36 out of 39 midterm elections since 1862, the president's party has lost seats in Congress. Those numbers suggest that voters often want Congress to act as a brake on the president's authority, says Connick. With Republicans currently controlling both chambers of Congress and the White House, many experts consider that it is likely that Democrats will do well next month. The most likely place for Democrats to pick up seats is the House of Representatives. Currently, Democrats hold 193 seats and Republicans hold 237. To take control of the House, Democrats will need to hold on to seats that they already have, win 2 vacant seats in solidly Democratic districts, and win 23 seats currently held by Republicans. The Senate is closely divided. Republicans hold 51 seats, while Democrats and the 2 independents who caucus with them hold 49. Democrats are less likely to make gains here because many more Democratic senators are up for re-election this year than Republicans, including 10 Democrats in Republican-leaning states. Hanging over all these races are the president's poll numbers. While most Republicans support Trump, 85% according to a recent Gallup poll, his approval ratings with the entire electorate have been hovering below 40%. Compared with the average presidential approval rating of more than 50%, Frank Luntz, a longtime Republican pollster, says some Republican candidates are facing difficult races because independent voters are turned off by the president and leaning toward Democratic candidates. Which party controls Congress for the next 2 years could have an enormous impact on Trump's presidency and the nation. It affects the extent to which Trump is able to carry out his administration's priorities, including building a wall on the border with Mexico, lowering taxes, and curtailing immigration in the U.S. But in Trump's case, the effect of midterms could be much greater than usual. Voter turnout is key. Special counsel Robert Mueller is investigating whether anyone in the Trump campaign worked with Russians who interfered with the 2016 election to help Trump win. And the president's former personal lawyer, Michael Cohen, has told a federal court that Trump directed him to make legal payments to silence 2 women who claim to have had affairs with Trump. If Democrats control the House of Representatives, that body is much more likely to launch investigations into these and other matters. The House could also consider impeachment proceedings against the president, a move that many Democratic voters are calling for. On the Senate side, Democratic control would, among other things, halt the administration's ability to get conservative judges confirmed. Of course, there's no guarantee that the party out of power will do well in a midterm. The key, as well with any election, is voter turnout. And whichever party convinces more people to show up at the polls will prevail. The hard part is getting voters, whether they're Republicans, Democrats, or independents, to understand that Congress has real impact on our lives by making our laws and deciding how to spend taxpayer money. People often dismiss the importance of midterms, says Kostas Papadopoulos, political science professor at Northeastern University in Boston. But the truth is, they're just as, if not more, important than the presidential elections. And here's a quick story about why this person's registering voters. She says, most of my life, I knew nothing about voting. I figured that if you were an American citizen, you could show up at the polls. It turns out that's not true. You have to register to vote before you're able to cast a ballot on Election Day. The problem is that not everyone knows this, which causes people to miss out on their chance to have a say. In fact, there's a lot of confusion surrounding the voting process. I decided to help fix that. In March, I started volunteering to register voters with a nonprofit called Next Gen America. After school and on weekends, I head to areas where there are large crowds, such as farmers markets and local parks, and ask people if they're registered. If they're not, or if they're confused by the voting laws, I walk them through what they need to do to help them register on the spot. Most people are really appreciative of what we do. I speak both English and Spanish, which is helpful because a lot of Latinos live in my area. Many people in this community think they can't vote, but I explain to them that yes, they can. I'm so proud of the work I've done. Some of the volunteers aren't old enough to cast a ballot, but we're still making a big difference in the voting process. After all, retweeting and sharing political posts on social media can be good for raising awareness, but nothing produces as much change as voting. So there you guys have it. That's a look at midterm elections and why they matter in the grand scheme of Congress and the nation at large. Thank you very much for tuning in, and good luck with completing the rest of the lesson.